Farming, a topic that ignites debate. A millennia of work, a lifetime of pressure. Farming is under constant scrutiny for its lack of responsibility towards saving our planet. Everyone wants to help fix the world, but the divide between farmers and government is larger than ever. No one is talking. It's time to put a stop to that.
And once they're taken away, there will be no countryside for people to come to.
There's a lot of work to do on the research side, I think, to get the calculations right before we tarnish a lot of the livestock industry about what's going on.
Some large event and we will have a major problem.
My name is Joe Bell, and this is Fields of Change. Come on, Eric!
It's no wonder farming is under scrutiny. Its huge contributions to climate change doesn't go unnoticed. From farm machinery to the animals itself. On a national scale, farming contributes up to 30% of greenhouse gas emissions and a staggering 69% of all nitrous oxide emissions. The industry is unravelling due to online pressures, but no one actually knows the truth. The debate has become a shouting match, and if the issue isn't addressed, soon lasting damage may be done to an industry that employs millions. Having reduced his farming land by almost 50%, Billy is more than willing to adapt to new government plans. But how far can he stretch before it becomes too much?
My name's Billy Rennick. I farm at Craig Douglas Farm up the Yarrow Valley. I've lived here most of my life and farmed here for 50 years along with my father and then my family.
There's been protests with farmers protesting government plans down in Wales. A lot of farmland is now going to rewilding mandatory. Do you agree with the idea to protest, or do you think farmers are wasting their time?
What we're doing.
I quite understand why they're doing it, because no one seems to be listening. Government don't appear to have a great policy and know what direction they're supposed to be going in. And I think a lot of it is through frustration. Because what we don't want to do is upset the general public and inconvenience them, because they are great supporters, especially in Scotland, of agriculture. But it's already happening, you would see, up in the Cairngorm National Park, because of the sort of dictatorship and the constraints that are put on some of the farmers up there. Most of the farms are farmed by family farms, and you know, it's them that keeps the communities together and keeps the schools open in the countryside and keeps the countryside living. And once they're taken away, there will be no countryside for people to come to.
Farmers across the world are becoming tired of miscommunication. Pressure from both government officials and social media are forcing them to protest. But for a moment, I want to take a step back. I want to take a look at the lives of these farmers and find out exactly what they're doing to reach the net zero aims.
So, Sean Williams, I'm the farms manager at Bowhill Estate, or Bowhill Farming Limited. Is a subsidiary company of Buccleuch Estates. So we feed all the dung from our livestock enterprises into a digester, and we've got enough muck to run about 160 kilowatts an hour. Based on manures, we top it up then with silage or any other waste we have on farm. But everything you see is owned by.
So Sean can take the muck that his animals produce on farm, put them through this machine and generate electricity from it. Sounds simple, right?
So how many cattle have you got on the farm here?
So we're running a total of 540 breeding cows. So these are the kind of young stock of what's on farm currently, the cows on the other two farms basically. It's slightly different to a normal farm. This would be then used as the dung would be classed as fertiliser to go back onto the fields, where we kind of take this out of here and put it through an anaerobic digester to generate electricity, and then that produces a fertiliser to come out of that plant for the fields. So this is actually quite a valuable product to the business. This is cattle muck, so the cattle we've just looked at, this is muck that was mucked out of the adult cows about last week here. So you can see there's a bit of fermentation going on there, so what we're trying to do is catch that and put it and catch the gas off it.
Using the muck from the cows and other animals on farm, Sean feeds this machine every day. And as the clock runs down, it pushes the muck into the big tanks behind it.
These tanks are full just now of gas, so the problem is that's why we're having to vent off a bit, because otherwise you'd have to just let it go.
He's like, okay, and it's just a waste.
Because the bugs are producing too much for what we can control.
Okay, and so when this is full or whatever, what do you do with it after that?
So it goes through an engine, and that engine generates electric from that gas.
Right. And so this computer here, this like tells you everything you need to know.
Controls the whole thing, yeah.
Controls the whole thing.
Yeah. So that is running on the gas from those tanks. It's generating 200 kilowatts every hour. So an average household will use half a kilowatt an hour. So this is generating enough for about 400 houses every hour.
Well, everything that you've said about the digester so far when we've been around the farm has been amazing, but why isn't everyone doing this if it's so great?
So yeah, it's the cost. It's an expensive product to put in. You know, when we built ours, it was 1.4 million to put in. So for any livestock farm to put it in, it was quite difficult. But the other thing about it is the scale of it, because it fits our business, but it's only a small one. But for a small farm that's got 100 cows, they haven't got enough muck to run one.
There's a moral inkling to go sustainable, but did you feel there was pressure from campaign groups or environmentalists to really change what you're doing, sorry?
I suppose the bigger problem is there's a lot of talk about our customers looking at changing out of meat and proteins or meat-based proteins into vegetarian type diets, and that's all very well, but the environment we farm in is purely grass type countryside, so the only thing we can do is grow trees, grow grass and nothing else. We feel a bit of pressure from that side as farmers that we should be looking at what we're doing, but I think animals play a major part within the ecosystem, i.e. they produce the manures helps the soils then give you all the crops and the feedstocks, and it grows more grass in the back of it. There's a lot of work to do on the research side, I think, to get the calculations right before we tarnish a lot of the livestock industry about what's going on.
So I've just left Sean's farm, and it's been really interesting learning about the new technologies that we can get on farms these days, and ways that Sean can reuse what would just usually be farm waste, and even generate electricity out of it. But one thing that I did notice is that he actually seemed genuinely worried that soon there would be no animals left, and that's the direction that everyone wants to go. But do we really have any other choice? Charities like Stock Free Farming don't seem to think so. Their push for all arable land to go for human consumption would mean an abrupt end to the livestock industry.
I'm Rebecca Knowles. I'm the founding director of Stock Free Farming. We help farmers and crofters to transition out of what we perceive to be environmentally burdensome livestock agriculture into fairer, greener forms of land management. There's a new Scottish Ag Bill going through the Parliament. It's in stage 1, and so what's going to come after that is 50% of farm payments are going to be conditional on these environmental, nature and biodiversity and climate measures. So helping farmers move towards that, and really there's no way that we're going to be able to do that without a reduction in livestock numbers. If the government says they want this, they want nature-friendly farming, they want carbon-friendly farming, so if they're willing to pay farmers to do that, I think farmers will do it. We had one lady in answer to that question, a farmer, she lives quite near me actually, and I asked her that question and she's like, yes, If they paid us as much as they do for taking care of the cows, of course I would switch. What I would like to see is us using our arable land, first of all, to grow crops for human consumption. We do know, and this was a DEFRA study, I think it was 2008, and there's been other studies since, that we do actually have enough existing arable land in the UK to grow enough food to meet the calorific and nutrient needs of us all. You know, whether you're vegan or not vegan, you got to look at the foods you're eating and say, how can I be more sustainable? You know, and the desire to support British farmers, we have to. We really have to.
But a reduction in livestock isn't just about sustainability. For farmers like Stuart, who cut down massively on the amount of animals he has on farm, it's given him a much healthier work-life balance and provided him some much-needed time with his family.
So I'm Stuart Mitchell, farm here at Whitriggs Farm in the Scottish Borders, just outside Hawick. We've got Shorthorn Cross Angus cattle here. They're native bred from Britain, and yeah, they're up here, up on our hill for the winter, grazing away.
So you can see that there's a wire right across. Do you just move that across every day, or?
Yeah, so in here there's 65 cows, and they get a daily allocation of 1 bale of hay and the strip of grass, and we just move this wire across the hill, and on the 10th of April we finish.
What's the benefits of feeding like this? Why not just feed them in a ring feeder every year?
It started off down to cost, hauling in straw, fertiliser, feeding, to feed them in a shed for the winter for 6 or 7 months was just far too expensive, and it was making cows unviable. They do a lot better, they're a lot healthier because they're out in the air. They don't get the bugs from inside, but also they're really fit because they walk up and down the hill every day.
Stuart's mob grazing system is not only more beneficial for his stock, but also means his farm has become organic. But what exactly does that mean?
Organic farming for us basically means sustainable, keeping the farm sustainable so that it's here in the future, so we can provide food in the future. And it's just about not depleting the soils, basically regenerating what's there. In this field there's a cover crop, and it's just about keeping living roots in the soil all the time, keeping everything living, and yeah, trying to work along with nature all the time. So when we took the pressure off, it became more sustainable. There was a few personal benefits. It was we had more time. Work-life balance is quite a big thing. There's a lot of farmers work far too many hours, and that can cause a lot of stress as well. And yeah, financially the farm was in a lot better place. So this is the plaque for the award we won in November last year. It was the inaugural award ceremony for the Scottish Agricultural Awards, and we won Sustainable Farm of the Year. After all the changes we've made and what we're doing now, it was a bit of a pat on the back to prove to ourselves that we are doing the right thing. It makes the whole farm more enjoyable, more time for doing things when you're not running, fighting fires all the time, trying to maximise everything. You just go along, you work with nature. If you start fighting it, it just costs you money.
Animal health is obviously a big part of it, but like in terms of the climate and in terms of your efforts towards organic, like how does that impact? Is it better for the environment now that you just kind of leave them to it, or?
Well, we believe it's better for the environment. Our grasses are now rested a lot longer, so they're deeper rooted, which prevents erosion, brings minerals back up to the soil. The tides change and everything's now improving rather than degrading.
Stuart's shift away from artificial fertiliser has not only reduced his carbon output, but also increased his crop yield. A cover crop with a mix of legumes has been proven to increase crop yield by up to 13%. That's because legumes, such as pinto beans or lentils, trap the nitrogen from the air into the ground, compact it, which encourages deeper root growth. So on days like today when it's a little bit more rainy, that crop can grow just a little bit more. Poppy has been working with farmers who use different grazing methods. One of these being mob grazing, like Stuart, as she wants to find out exactly how these sustainable methods benefit the soil.
So I am Poppy Frater. I've got 2 roles at the moment. I am a sheep and grassland specialist with SAC Consulting, and I'm also part-time doing a PhD entitled Is Mob Grazing Beneficial to Soil Health and to the Environment? So as part of my PhD, I'm looking at soil carbon sequestration. That's kind of like the headline thing I'm looking at. But we're also looking at other measures of soil health. This being one of them. This is looking at water stable aggregates. So it's a series of sort of wet sieving. So one of the things we see under mob grazing compared to other types of grazing is you'll see different species in the sward over time. And there's been some evidence to show that it favours legumes, which are nitrogen fixing plants. And that enables farmers to reduce dependency on nitrogen fertiliser. It sounds like too good to be true, right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I say, the science has maybe yet to catch up with the farmer observation in this regard. But theoretically, I can see why that would be the case. As there's more organic matter returns into the soil, there's more nutrients either held in the soil, and then the biology is that bit more active as well, which are turning over the nutrients and improving the soil fertility, which is fantastic if it reduces your dependency on bought-in fertiliser. I think the farming will continue to be a diverse landscape of diverse systems, and greater integration of other methods that are adding to the landscape beyond food production, because farmers aren't just food producers. They are the custodians of the landscape. Yeah, I think the future is diverse.
For farmers like John, however, implementing carbon cutting measures isn't as easy as it seems.
I'm John Davidson. I was brought up in a farm 2 miles down the road from here, and me and my wife Margaret came into Crossley Farm in 1990. The farm is a hill sheep farm. It runs approximately 1,200 sheep and about 50 cows. You've got to just keep it in front of them, just lets them access it a wee bit more easily. Well, this is grass silage, so we grow about 80 acres of silage and produce about 120 of the silage bales.
John requires a high yield of crops to keep his animals fed in the winter, so he tends to stick with traditional fertiliser. However, its high nitrogen count makes it quite dangerous for the environment.
Unless you have an outside source of manure, possibly from chicken sheds or something, you will reduce your yields. When we first came here, the fertiliser indexes were all very, very low because it hadn't had fertiliser for almost forever. So we've used a compound fertiliser, which, well, we use usually a 1616, which is 16 units of nitrogen, 16 of phosphorus and 16 of potash. So that just gives a good general background for grass growth. The nitrogen boosts the grass in the year that it's applied, and the phosphate and the potash are important for just keeping the roots and the whole structure of the plant correct. So you can't do one without the other.
John feels his methods of farming are sustainable, but for him, the term differs to what the government expect.
It's quite a difficult concept because first of all you have to decide, what do you mean by sustainable? Do you mean sustainable in an economic sense, or do you mean sustainable in the resources you use? In our case, the farm is just over 1,600 acres and we use quite a small amount of fertiliser, but without that fertiliser on our grass fields, we would not be able to produce the winter feeding that we need. If you want it to be all as they would call traditional, where they just use animal muck to fertilise the ground, it can be done, but you will probably halve your output, and if you do that on a world basis, there isn't enough food to feed people. And people have just got very, very comfortable with assuming there will always be enough food. And while we have famines in some countries, there has never been a situation in recent history where the world didn't have enough food to feed these people. But we are getting closer and closer to that situation. It is quite precarious, and it just takes some large event and we will have a major problem. He wants to be in the camera.
My journey across these farms has been eye-opening for me. While each one takes a different approach to sustainability, there's a general consensus that food security needs to be prioritised, and it's not just a case of getting rid of farmers. A greater push for organic methods is needed. Using nitrogen fertiliser is damaging our planet, but lasting damage will be done to millions of lives if we don't find a solution soon. While the future of farming remains uncertain, it seems there is still lots to be done to find a fair deal where everyone can win. But until then, it's back to work for me.